Finnegans Wake, Book 1, Chapter 3. We'll see how far we get. Just see stents, corpo de barragio. You spoof of visibility in a freak fog, of mixed-sex cases among Goat's Hill Cat and Plain Mousy, Bigamy Bob and his old Shanvocht. The Blackfriars treacle plaster outrage belittled. Therewith was released in that King's Rick of Humidia a poisoning volume of cloud barrage indeed. Yet all they who heard or re-delivered are now with that family of bards in Vergobretas himself, and the crowd of Caracolacticors, as much no more as be they not yet now, or had they then not ever been. Can be in some future we shall presently hear amid these zouave players of Inkerman the mime mumming the Mick and the Nick miming their Maggies. Hilton St. Just, Mr. Frank Smith, Evan Santa Stell, Mr. J.F. Jones, Coleman of Lucan taking 4 parts, a choir of the O'Daly O'Doyles, double-sixing the chorus of Fen McCall and the Servin Furies of Loch Nick. Galloper, Tropler, and Hurlequin, the zitherer of the past with his merrymen all, zim, 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 zim. Of the persons in this Iria Wigla saga, which, thorough readable to int from ant, is from top to bottom all fast issues, anti-libellous, and non-actionable, and this applies to its whole volume. Of poor Asti Fasti, described as quite a musical genius in a small way, and the owner of an exceedingly nice deer, with tenorous voice to match, not alone, but a very major poet of the poorly meritary order. He began Twinisonian, but worked his passage up as far as the we all hang together Animadnevites. No one end is known. If they whistled him before he had curtains up, they are whistling him still after his curtains doom's doom. Efu, his husband, poor old Akara, Akarov, crestfallen by things and down at heels at the time, they squeak, accepted the Zasnok, Ardry's shilling at the conclusion of the Crimean War, and, having flown his wild geese, aloned in crowds to wander on Shuli Looney, enlisted in Tyrone's horse, the Irish Whites, and soldiered a bit with Wolsey under the assumed name of Blanco Fusilovna Buklovich Spurious, after which the choir in the marble halls of Columbarium, the home of the old sea kings, looked upon each other in queth their haven evermore, for it transpires that on the other side of the water it came about that on the field of Vasilev's Koronix, inauspiciously with his unit he perished, saying, "This papal leafless to old chap give, raw chocolates for mother in Louth. Boy, poor old dear Paul Horan, to satisfy his literary as well as his criminal aspirations, at the suggestion thrown out by the doomster in loquacity lunacy, so says the Dublin intelligence, was thrown into a Ridley's for inmates in the northern counties. Under the name of Arani, he may have been the utility man of the troop, capable of sustaining long parts at short notice. He was. Sordid Sam, a dour, decent deblancer, the unwashed, haunted always by his ham, the unwished, at the word from Israfel the summoner, passed away painlessly after life's ups and downs, one Halloween night, ebrus and in the state of nature, propelled from behind into the great beyond by foot blows, cooling clouted upon his oyster and atlas, on be hanged and behoved and be hicked and be hoked of his last fishing blood bed scrappers, a Northwegian and his mate of the she-wolving class. Though the last straw glimpsed his bearing, this stage thunker it is said, the pitfall and gagged him a prompt boxer, to have solemnly said, as had the brief thought but fell until his head like a base dropped neck first until a bone crate cogged. Me dreams, O'Loughlin's, has come through. Now let the centuple selves of my egorge, as Michaelis de Cusack calls them, of all of whose I in my hereinafter of course by recourse demission me, by the coincidence of their contraries, re-amalgamerge in that identity of undiscernibles, where the Baxters and the Fleshmans may they cease to be Divilons, but at this point, through the iron thrust of his cockspurt start might have prepared us, we are well nigh stink-pottered by the mustard punch in the tail end. This outen in brown candlestalk melt Nolans into peace. Hanvar, disliking as he was to drama, her wife Langley, the prophet, and the decentest, dozentest, short of a frusker whoever, stuck his spickle through his spoke, disappeared, in which to doing he had taken all the French leaves unavailable out of the column Aquiller's pravities, from the surface of this earth, that austral plane he had transmarried himself to so entirely spoorlessly, the mother of the book with the dust-whisk tabula raising, his obliteration done upon her invulcrum, as to tickle the speculative to all but opine, since the Levy who might have been Langley may have really been a redivivus of paganism or a volunteer of Woolston, that the hobo, who possessed a large amount of the humoresque, had transtrued his funster's latitat to its finsterest and terimost. Be she, again, if Father Sam Brown, tea and toaster to that quaintest of yarn spinners, is Padre de Bruno. Tren and troster to the Queen of Ear Spain, was the Reverend, the Sodality Director, the eupeptic Vice Flayer, a bare-faced Carmelite to whose palpitating pulpit, which of us but remembers the rare valiant and honourable Frato Mr. Knowlemore and Braun, sinning society sirens, see the Roman Catholic, press passum, fortunately became so enthusiastically attached, and was an objectionable ass who very occasionally cockaded a raffles ticket on his hat, which he wore all to one side like the hangle of his pan. If her elegance saw him, she'd have the canary, and was semi-privately convicted of malpractices with his hot-washed table knife, glossing over the cark in his pocket. The same snob of the Dunhill, fully several yearshams riper, encountered by the general on that red-letter morning, or May noon, Jove's day, and were they? Fweet. When Fishlin Phil once throw his lips till folly to be fortune flaunting, and Hoyer gone to mix hotel by the salt say water, there's next to nothing we can do, for he's never again to see. It is nebulous in autodidact fact of the commonest that the shape of the average human cloudy fizz, whereas sallow has long days faded, frequently altered its ego with the passing of the showers, not original, whence it is slopperish matter, given the wet and low visibility, since in this Scheherazade of one's thousands and one nightinesses, that sword of certainty which would identify the body never falls. To identify the individuum in scratch wig, square cuts, stock lavalier, regattable oxeter, baggy pants and shufflers, he is often alluded to as Sly Patrick, the lad in the lane, with already an incipient lust in the direction of area baldness. One is continually first meeting with odd sorts of others at all sorts of ages, who was asked by free board school shirkers in drenched coats overall, Will Con and Otto, to tell them over agate, Paul Vendev, that fish-a-bed goat story of the hardly creditable adventures of the haberdasher, the two kerchies, and the three ankle chums in their bear-skin goats, girls and jongers, but he has changed the lock sign Thornkill's time. Yada cha, Gary Pimpchesses, Shawsfat, Okabidoko, 9. Those many warts, those slummy patches, half-sinister wrinkles, What has come over the face of the whole broadery? And shrine of Mount Moose, save us! The large fungal park he has grown. Drink. Sport's a common thing. It was the Lord's own day for damp. To wait for a postponed regatta's eventualizing is not of Battlecock, Chateaudour, Juxtamer only, and the request for a fully armed explanation was put, in lieu of Pat, to the portee, a native of the sister isle, Meath Minormechan, by his brogue, X-ray size, local collar, and local order, which are said to have been average Crown Turkish, though the capitalist's voice nasal liquids, and the way he sneezed at these haul us back to the crogs and brands of Silurian Ordovices, who, the lesser pilgrimage accomplished, had made, Pats and Pigs order in Celt, the southeast bluffs and the stranger stepshore, refugium persecutorum, hence hindquarters, as he paused at even chime, for some or so minutes. Hit the pipe, Danny boy. Time to one, barman. I'll take 10 to win. Amid the devil's own doldrum, apple by her blossom, window in Charlotte at her toss panomancy, is soul in Byres, his only terts in store. For a fragrant coulabosh during his weekend pastime of executioning with any Oakley deadliness the consummatory pairs of provocatives, of which remained provokingly but two, the ones he fell for, Lily and Tutu Corkum, empties which had not very long been contained, Reed's family. You rode that before, Soki, but all the bottles and sordid history will not soften your blood athirst. Stout. Having reprimed his repeater and resitterumed his timepiece, his revenances, with still a life or two to spare for the space of his occupancy of a world at a time, rose to his feet, and there, far from Tokerheim, in a quiet English garden, commonplace, since known as Whittington Wild, his simple, intensive, querulent vocality, my dear brathers, my most dear brathers, as he, so is a supper as is a sipper, spake of the one, and told of the compassionate, caught up before the triad of precocious scare-makers, score-taking, speculo ne helps, al malebululo, mi credas que vi estas prava, via dote la visago respondas frolino, the now to usher mythical habiliments of our farer and Arthur of our doings. Television kills telephony in Brothers Broil. Our eyes demand their turn. Let them be seen. And wolf-bone balefires blaze in the trailmost, if only that Mary Nothing may burst her bibby buckshee. When they set fire, then she's got to glow, so we may stand some chances of warming to what every surka batcha, tom or hum, would like to know. The first Humphrey's latitudinous braver with puggery behind. Calaboose belong big boss, belong Kang the Toll. His four-in-hand bow, his elbow-room surtout, the refaced unmentionables of gingerine hue, the state slate umbrella, his gruff woolsy-welsy with the findrin knops and the gauntlet upon the hand, which in the hour not for him solely evil, had struck down the might he might have been, Destaire, of whom his nation seemed almost already to be about to have need. Then, stealing his thunder, but in the befitting legomena of the smaller country, probable words, possibly said, of field family gleaming, a bit duskish and flavoured with a smile, seeing as how his thoughts consisted chiefly of the Cheerio, he aptly sketched for our soon-to-be second parents, Suckin C.Y.B., the touching scene, the solence of that stilling. Here one might have fin fell, boomster rombomborant. It seems like a landscape from Wirdu Picarescu, or some scene on some dim arras, domas moms mutinus, this mimage of the 77th cousin of Christensen is audible to us across the wineless air. No ear, no mere eerie, nor less potent of suggestion than in the tales of the Ting Mount Breed. And there oft after, jaunty jogging on an Irish vis-a-vis, in steadily with shoulder to shoulder, Jehu will tell to Christian Yare, saint to sage, the Humphreyad of that fall and rise, while Daisy winks at her pinker sister among the tussocks, and the couple between the shafts mocks the couple on the car. And as you're who may look like how on the outer side of his big beltry your tires and clothes, your nose and paradigm may rearise in Erin. Follow we up his whip vindicative, Thurstons, lo be bold, la Orbero, la Petrusu, the Augustin peace beto them oaks, the monolith rising stark from the moonlit pine barren, in all fortitudinous ejactious noisy tenacity, the angelus hour with ditchers bent upon their farm utensils, the soft belling of the fallow deers, doremus genuine, advertising their milky approach as midnight was striking the hours, letate, and how brightly the great tribune outed the sharkskin smoke wallet imitation, from which his frock kippers, and by Joshua, he tips on a topping swank cheroot, none of your Swedish Swede, quite the reverse, and how manfully he says, pluck to pluck and leckin for looking, he was to just pluggy well suck that brown boy, oh my son, and spend a whole half hour in Havana. Sorter of the Creeksman, would not there be old high gross prog, wherefore we met master, he mean to say, he do, sire, bester of red publicans, at Eaglecock Hostel on Lorenzo Tulu Street, and how he wished his honour the bannocks of Gort, and Mortia, and Breehead, and Puttyrick, your lordship, and the starch box sitting in the pit of his St. Thomas. A strange wish for you, my friend, and it would poleaxe your son's grandson utterly, though your own old sweat and swear Florians heaved it hawk many as a times, when they were terrified by the hits. Cheers for up King Billy, and crew Cramwell's down aboo. Hop boys and Haddam, see, oil beam they're lost, we've found remembrancers. They're ours to date, link these hairs to here, but where are those yours of yesterdays? Far seeing ye rich, the poor old woman, Caractricus, and his Anne Van Vogt deed. Ednet ended or sleeping soundlessly? Favour with your tongues, intendite. Any dog's life you list, you may still hear them at it, like sixes and seventies, as ever sure as Halley's Comet. Yule mammin, sovereign Juamin, storting boys and dumma girls, as they pass its bleak and bronze portal of your Casa Concordia. Horo morne, mini frickens, horle stardy det, Lusteron left Malari's queue, Mille siento trigen tetadio scuri, tippity kyrie tippity, chakai roti kai makar sahib, dispensame usted, senor, and socoroti, and sacco sabes. O Thobranon, O Carthage, think thou gaily, lick pa flay hai pa palili lang lang, epi alo eku, batiste, tu vavre dans le pit boing going, is meme de bombac et mes de portocali. Oh, as pipos mios es desmacera grosso por, piccolo Pinocchio, piccolo pochino, oui fi, doro, Hoxix Zabat? Mercy. And you? Gomag, tak. And God, says he with mugger's tears, would you care to know the price of a laird? Magus Nick in your nighty novel. Mass taverners at the Mike Begin. And that bag belly is the buck to goat it. McGig, McGay, chap-chappy fellow, I call our univalse to witness. As sicker as my liffy eggs is known by her good house-hotters from your hundreds of Mammouth, to be which they commercially are in ahoy high British quarters conventional. My guest house and cow handle credits will immediately stand hoping as straight as that neighbouring monument's fabrication before the hygienic gliss was where the reverend Sabbath and bottle breaker with furbalk forth stretched touched upon his tri-coloured boater, which he uplifted by its pickled hoopy. He gave Stetson 1 and a penny for it, while as oleaginosity of ancestral ololos scotchulated down the both pendencies of his muzzo-hito lip-tails. Sen capitulo, a more modestruous consyllabulite never curled a torn pocket's mouth, cordially inviting the adolescents who he was wising up to do in like manner what all did, so as he was able to add, lo, before the great schoolmasters, I tell you no story. Smile. The house of Atriox is fallen in the dust. Iliam, Ilium, mera morna mates, averging on blight like the mundy banks of Feniana. But deeds bounds going rise again. Life, he himself said once, his Biago friend, in fact, kills him very soon, if yet not after, is awake, livet or cricket, and on the bunk of our bread-winning lies the corpse of our seed-father, a phrase which the establisher of the world by law might pretinately write across the chest-front of all manner woman born. The scene, refreshed, re-roused, was never to be forgotten. The hen and the crusader, ever intermutual emergent, for later in the century one of that puin band of fact-ferreters, then an ex-civilly out of customs huts, retired, hurt, under the 65's act in a dressy black and modern style, and were shiny tan Burlingtons, tam-homed and dicky, quo prequos and pajagged, rehearsed it, pippa pointing, with a dignified, copied, bow to the name cousin of the late Archdeacon F.X. Preserved Coppinger, a hot fellow in his night, made a mouther of guard have mastic on him, in a pool woman of our first trans-Hibernian, with one still sadder circumstance, which is a dark heart-skewerer, if ever to bring bouncing brimmers from marbled eyes, cycloptically through the window dusks, and with eddying aws the round eyes of the rundizers, back to back, buck to bucker, on their airish chaunting car, beheld with interesting interestedness the clad pursue the bear the green the frore the clad again, and their convoy wheeled encirclingly abound the gigantic's life-tree, our fur-leaved lover-lucky blomster balm, phoenix in our wordlessness, haughty, cacuminal, erubescent repetition, whose roots they be asks with lustres of pains, as for often as the archicadenus, pleasing aside his Irish field, and craving their auriculars to receptacle particulars before they got the bump at Castlebar, Mattenfar, spoke of it by request all, hearing in this new reading of the part whereby, because of Dias in his machina,
The new Garrickson's grimacing Grimaldism, hypostasized by substantiation the axiomatic utter rotundity of that once grand old Elrington ball. The copycost's description of that fellow commuter's play upon countenance could simply imagine themselves in their balsam's inmost core as pro tem locums time sported across the yawning abyss. As once they were seasiders, listening to the cockshy shooter's evensong evocation of the doomed but always ventriloquent agitator, no not more planopround, the billows o'er Thanawali reef. Silcoated, a walrus mighty ad, against the dusk of scumbering, would that fain be St. Muezzin's calling? Holy places! And this fez brimless as brow as faithful toucher of the ground, did wish it were. Blessed be the bones, the Ghazi, power of his sword. His manslayer's gun-wielder protended towards that overgrown lead pencil, which was soon, monumentally at least, to rise a molive Don Collie Dylan to be his mausoleum. O Dan Stad till stain at Meisel's ice gold Chopin, while all over his exculpatory features, as Roland rung, a wee dropping of grief about to silenize his jujus. The ghost of resignation diffused a spectral appealingness as a young man's drown o'er the fate of his waters make loat, similar in origin and accurate and effective to a beam of sunshine upon a coffin plate. Not otherwise in the days of beginning would our traveller remote, unfriended, from Van Diemen's land, some lazy scout or maundering poet, lift weary Willie his slow-cut snob-sick eyes to the semi-signs of his zodiac and lengthily lingering along flash-neck, cracket cup, downtrodden brogue, turf sod, wild broom, cabbage blad, stockfish, longingly learn, there at the Angel were herbage for him, poteen and tea and praties and baccy and wine with woman worth warbling. And informally quasi begin to presquiamile, to creaseth in nonsense. There was not very much windy nose blowing at the given moment, though the hat of Mr. Melancholy slow. But in the pragma, what formal cause made a smile of that to think? Who was he to whom? O'Brien's not his name, nor the brown one his maid. Who are the place-wearers? Coasti, Kisker, Kither, Kitnabudja. Ta the tem of the tumulum, give the gav of the grove, be it cudgels, be it cudgel players, country or fish fellows, towns, or Lee Liquor's land, or Pampanungo po Vingreski. What regnans raised the rames have levelled, but we hear the pointers and can gauge their compass, for the Milos yields the mode, and the mode the manners Plysiman, Plansiman, Prusiman, Plab. Tsin, the force fathers folkers, for a prize of 2 peaches, with Ming, Ching, and Shunny on the lie low lee. We'll sit down on the hope of the Holy Ghost, for the tithman troubleth, but his hanty-tant highs not here. They answer from the Zoans. Hear the 4 of them, hark to roar of them. Aye, says Armagh, and am proud of it. Aye, says Clonokilty, God help us. Aye, says Dean's Grange, and say nothing. Aye, says Barna, and what about it? Hee-haw! Before he fell ill, he filled heaven. A stream, alpalapping streamlet, coily coiled him, cool of her curls. We were but termites then, we, Our ant-heap we sensed as a hill of Allen, the barrow for the people, a jotner's fjell, and it was a grummelung among the pork troop that wonder struck us at a thunder yonder. Thus the unfacts, did we possess them, are too imprecisely few to warrant our certitude. The evidence givers by leg-pole too untrustworthily irreparable, where his adjugers are seemingly freak-trees, but his jubacandies plainly -2s. Nevertheless, Madame Tushawis waxes largely more life-liked, entrance 1 kudos, exits free, and our notional gullery is now completely complacent, an exegious monument, airily perennious, oblige with your blackthorns, gamps de grace, and there many have paused before that exposure of him by old Tom Quad, a flashback in which he sits sated, gowned about, in clerical ease habit, watching bland souls slithe dodgesomely into the nethermore, a globule of mogulness about to corrugate his mild-dewed cheek, and the tatter of a tiny Victorienne Alice pressed by his limper looser. Yet certes one is, ere the following winter had overed the pages of nature's book, until sair bar at the cleath became drab dablena tertia, the shadow of the huge outlander, maledic, multrot, magnoperis, had bulked at the bar of a rota of tribunals in Manor Hall as in thieves' kitchen, mid-pillow talk and shithouse chat on Marlborough Green as through Molesborough fields, here sentenced pro-tried with Jedburgh justice, there acquitted, con testimony with benefit of clergy. His thing maud have undone him, and his mad thing has done him man. His beneficiaries are legion in the party created. They number up his years. Great Wheel Dunlap was the name was on him. Be hung, all we are his besicles. As holiday in his house, so was he priest and king to that. Old we came, envy saw, ivy conquered. Lulu, they have waved his green boughs o'er him, as they have torn him limb from lamb. For his mortification and expiration and damnation and annihilation, with Schreis and Greta, de profound suspirs, steady Sullivans, mannequins' paws, long tongues' breeches falling down, but granias spread abroad. Adoste, fidelions, adeste fidelions, and feel the fluker's balls, for the total of your flouts is not fit to fan his fetelo. Have a ring and sing well, chin 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 chin, and of course all chimed in with the utmost boviality, swiping rums and biones and sherries and ciders and negus and citronades too. The strongers, oh ho ho, Mr. Beg, you're about to be bagged in the bog again, bog. But soft seas shoof side, you fragassies. But lo, lo, by the threatening gods, human erring and condemnable, what the statues of our Kuo, who is the mischief be our Quang? Ashu, I'll sure there. The unforgettable tree-shade looms up behind the jostling judgments of those, as all should owe, mal-recapturable days. Tap and pat and tap it again. Fire first shot. Messieurs de Rufuseliers, ping pong for Saxon Luti. 3 Tomic soldiers free, Cockaleek and Capapee of the cold stream. Guards were walking in, pardonnez-le, le jour and pride. Montgomery Street. One voiced an opinion in which on either wide, pardonnez. Nodding, all the Finnegans concurred, je vous en prie. It was the first woman, they said, soaped him, that fatal Wednesday, Lily Conningham's, by suggesting him they go in a field. Roth Maud Eldfar, Ruth read still stand, wrath racked wrath, confessed Private Matt Mackeson, retro, terse. Thus contenters with Sartoy's play. One of our coming Vauxhall ontoboards, who is resting for the moment, she has been called by a noted stagey elocutioner, a waste packet sittins, was interviewed in a Waste End beauty parlour, looking perhaps even more beauty flushed in her cherry-derry padusois, girdle and braces by the half-moon and 7 stars, rochets from Blackamoor's Head, amongst the climbing boys at his eagle and child, and over the corn and hay empters, at their black and all black, Mrs. F.A. set aside, half in the stage of whisper, to her confidant glass, while recuperating her cartwheel chapat. And we now know what Dimbles a Buckets on Lalensatals means. She hoped Sid Arthur would get a Christmas's portrait of orange and lemon-sized orchids with holigs in ether from the fetor of the inoccident, as the world had been uncaned. Then, while it is odorous comparisoning to the sprang flowers of his birthday, which was a veritable garden party for the rainworms and the charlatinas and all branches of clematis. It has been such a wonderful noith entirely, added she, with many regards to Maha's prangipansies, tart, prehistoric, obliterated to his dictaphone, an entomologist. His pronomen is a propolis momen. A dustman knock-named 7 churches in the employ of Messrs. Ackburn, Salpeter, and Ashraborn, prayer-makers, Glintaloke, was asked by the sisterhood the vexed question during his midday collation of lever and buckram, alternately with stink and kitteny fee, in a hash-hosh and, thank heaven, responsed impulsively, "We have just been propagandering his nullity suit, and what they took out of his ear among my own crush. All our fellows at Odea's Sages with Aratar Calaman, he is a cemented brick, Bucketall, a mourner, usually sober, car driver, who was jauntingly hosing his runabout, Ginger Jane, took a strong view. Lord, he hosed her as he talked, and this is what he told we Reitiman. Ira Walker is just a plain pink jointry for me in private life, but folks all have it by Braham's laws. He has parliamentary honours. Isa Skiffer said, Luigi's, you know that man's, Branty sovereign. Mon foi, you wish to have some omelette? Yes, lady. Good mine labour. Your hag must break himself. See, I crack so. He sit in the poll, unbedimmed. A perspirer, over 60, who was keeping up his tennises panted, he ne ho hard toi to collect informacios, but a diff pair flannels climb wall, and trespassing on doorbell. After full-blown bradding, hear this fresky trotarella, a railway's barmaid's view, they call her Spiltier's rule, was thus expressed to sympathizers of the Dole line, Death Avenue, anent those objects of her pity-prompted ministrance, to wet, man and his siphon. Ahem. It is ever too late to whistle when Phyllis floods her stable. It would be scarlet shame to jally him in lockup, as he was proposed to him by the Sedum's creature. What matter of a meretrix went off with his revolver her in connections with him being an orphan and enjoining such wicked illeth him. Well done, Dromcollakill. Kitty Terrell is proud of you, was the reply of a B.O.T. official. Oh, blame not the board, while the daughter's bank letter murmured in uni-swoon. Golfer gilled his jury legs. Brian Linsky, the cob curser, was questioned at his shouting box. ball in a braggot, and gave a snappy comeback when saying, "Paw, once more I'll hell bowl. I am for caveman chase and Sahara sex, bark you. Them two bitches ought to be leashed, Canum. Up hog and whore hunt. Paw, a would-be martyr who is attending on Sanitasitas, where he is being taught to wear bracelets when grilled on the point, revealed the undoubted fact that the consequence would be that so long as Sankey Amundi played his mango tricks under the mystery, with shady apsaras sheltering in his leaves license, and his shadowers horrified by the potent bolts of interdiction, there would be fights all over Cuxhaven. Tosh! Missioner Ida Womwell, the 17-year-old revivalist, said concerning the coincidence of interfizzing with grenadines and other respectable and disgusted persons using the park, that perpendicular person is a brute, but a magnificent brute. Caligula, Mr. Danny McGrath, bookmaker well known to Australian poor users of the Sydney Parade Bulletin, was, as usual, antipodal with his striving toady, hopening tomello, wear splash, cobbler. We have meat too hourly, sang out El Captain Boycott, with the famous Padres Toreadors Cape Cast. Meet too hourly, Matadeer. Dan Michael John, presenter of SS Smackin' was probiverbo with his upsidoxic, mutatus mutandus, Doran's lord, sniffpox, and Morgan's lady, flatterfun, took sides and crossed and bowed to each other's views and recrossed themselves. The dirty dups opened their flies, went to free, echoed the Danely drabs down in their sanities. Ona Mona, Sylvia Silence, the girl detective, Memini Verve, Meminerva. But by now one hears turtlings all over Dublin. When supplied with informations as to the several facets of the case in her cosy-dozy's bachelor's flat, quite overlooking John O'Dream's muse, leaned back in her really truly easy chair to query restfully through her vow-threaded syllables. Have you ever thought, we poet, that Hugh's greatness was his tragedy? Nevertheless, according to my considered attitudes for this act, he should pay the full penalty, pending pursuance of pure subsect 32, Section 11 of the CLA Act 1885. Anything in this act to the contrary notwithstanding, Jarly Jilky began to silky, for he couldn't get home to Chelsea, but ended with, he's got the sack that helped him molt in stench of his gladsome rags. Meagre, a naval rating, seated on one of the granite cromlech sets of our new fish ambles for the usual aerating after ever-popular act, with whom were Cuesta and Puella, Piquant and Coat. This had a cold in her brain, while that felt a sink in her stomach. Wits wat wet, was encouraged, although nirvanashed himself, by one of his co-affianced to get your breath wat, and Gorberton when they're chidden by their fastra sastra to settle up your pants, Naville. Thus Cor replied to her other's thanks-kissing. I lay my 2-finger buttons, fiancé meagre, he speaks. He was to blame about you two velvetize up Horniman's Hill, as Hook and I blame him or any other piskman. But I also think, purely wally, by the siege of his trousers, there was someone else behind it. You bet your bottom blarneys, about their 3 drummers down Kaiser's Lane. Trite. Be these mere merchant tailors' fablings of a race referend with Odman's Rex? Is now all seen, heard, then forgotten? Can it was, one is fain in this leaden age of letters now to wit, that so diversified outrages, they have still to come, were planned and partly carried out against so staunch a covenanter, if it be true, than any of those recorded ever took place, for many, we trow, be yes to, and denayed of, are given to us by some who use the truth but sparingly, and we, on this side, ought to sorrow for their pricking pens on that account. The seventh city, Eurovibla, his citadel of refuge, whither would we believe the laymen in their accounts, beyond the outraved gales of Adriatic, changing clues with the Baggermeister, their heritage had fled. Silentuous sushamiat, their night sought to sonority. Ship alone, a raven on the wave, be mercy, Mara. Ahe whence, Rahulas, from the Osman's Dirtby on the old Vic, to forget an expiating manslaughter and rebirthing in remarryment out of dead sickness to divine previdence. If you are looking for the builder deep, your ear on the movie tone. To league his lot, palm and pat, with a papashy. For mine gvain I thee gift take, and bind my hosen band, I thee hotter. The Wastaby land, a lotus land, a luxurious land, emerald Ilium, the peasant pastured, in which by the fourth commandment with promise his days apostolic were to be long, by the abundant mercy of him which thundereth from on high, murmured, would rise against him with all which in them were. Franchi sables and inhabitants, Astia as agora, Herods philots do him hurt, poor jink, ghostly following bodily. As were he made a curse for them, the corruptible lay quick. All saints of incorruption of an holy nation, the common or air in garden castaway, in red resurrection to condemn so they might convince him. First Pharaoh, Humphreys, Cheops, Exarchus, of their proper sins, business bred to speak with a stiff upper lip to all men, and most occasions the man we wot of took little short of fighting chances, but for all that he or his care were subjected to the horrors of the premier terror of Errorland. Poor raps. We seem to us, the real us, to be reading Aramenti in the 6th sealed chapter of the Going Forth by Black. It was after the show at Wednesbury that one tall man, humping a suspicious parcel, when returning late amid a dense particular on his home way from the second house of the Boar and Burgess Christi Menstros by the old spot, Roy's Corner, had a Barkis revolver placed to his face with the words, "You're shot, Major," by an unknowable assailant, masked, against whom he had been jealous over Lotta Crabtree or Pomona Evelyn. More than that, when the waylayer, not a Lucalizad diocesan or even of the Glendalough sea, but hailing fro the prow of Little Britain, mentioning in the by-the-way that he, the cross-sapper, had, in addition to Reed's cutlass centre-blade, a loaded Hobson's, which left only twin alternatives as, vice versa, either he would surely shoot her, the aunt, by pistol, she could be okay sure of that, or, failing of such, bashing Patch's blank face beyond recognition, pointedly asked with gayish gal Wadker Blizzard's business Thornton had with that Cain's fender, only to be answered by the aggravated assaulted that was the snaps for him midweeks, to sultry well go and find out if he was the showery well able. But how transparently non-true, gentle writer. His feet one is not at all man, not at all man, no such parson, no such fender, no such lumber, no such race. Was it supposedly in connection with a girls, Miramy Huey or Colorus Archer, under Flaggy Bridge? For Anne there is but one live, and her new bridge is her old. Or to explode his 12-chamber and force a shrievalty entrance, that the heavy-built able-body, in a blucher blue blouse from One Life, One Suit, a menswear store, with a most decisive bottle of single in his possession, seized after dark by the town guard at Have You Caught Emerod's Temperance Gateway, was there in a gate's way. Fifthly, Harpara soliloquizingly, true-toned on his first time of hearing, the wretch's statement that, muttering Irish, he had a gloriously a lot too much hangest of horseshoe fine to drink in the house of blazes, the parrot in hell, the orange tree, the glupt, the sun, the holy lamb, and, lapse not least, in Rammet Down's ship hotel, since the morning moment he could distinguish a white thread from a black, till the engine of the laws declosed unto Murray, and was only falling fill the fruitherd up against the gate stone pier, which, with the cow's bonnet atop of it, he false took for a cattle pillar, the purest, peaceablest intentions. Yet how lamely hobbles the hoy of his then pseudo-jokax explanation how, according to his own story, he was a process server and was merely trying to open Zosimus a bottle-up stove by mercilessly hammering his magnum bonum, the Kircher the Club, the Sorter the Savage, against the bludgy gate for the boots about the Swan Mori Spihan, who hastily into his shoes with nothing his halbara tintique and came down with hump, stemp, and juffet to the tilt-yard of the wastes, asleep in his obi-oh he overcloves or choker, attracted by the Norse of guns playing the landy as cartager on the Raglar rock of Dullin. Said war prize safe in bed, as he dreamed that he'd wealths in his Mormon halls, when woke'd by a fourth loud snore of his land of Baello, by Hickstry's maws was grazing in the moonlight, by hearing hammering on the pandywank scale, emanating from the blind pig and anything like una, it in the whole history of the Mullingan Inn, he never. The battering babble all o'er the door and side-post, he always said, was not in the very remotest like the belsy babble of a bottle of booze, which would not rouse him out of slumber deep, but reminded him loads more of the martialosy marces of foreign musicants instruments, on the overthrower of the third last days of Pompery, if anything. And that after this most nooningless nocturne, the young rain came down desperate, and the old Liphopotamus started ploughing all over the plains, as mud as she could be, ruinating all the butchers' shirts and the backers' wish-chen-tugs, so that be the chandelier of rage in Igeri, they were the night washing the waters of, the weltering waters of white. Just one moment. A pinch in time of the ideal musketeers, Alphos, Burkos, and Caramis. Leave Astrilia for the astrologeries, and for the love of the sconces and the honour of Keevan's pike, put your whack back to Pomintul. And roll away the real world, the real world, the real world, and call on your smoke blushes, snow white and rosa red, if you will have the real cream. Now for a strawberry frolic, filons filouche, cherchons la flamme, fam, 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 fam. Come on, ordinary man with that large, big, non-obly head, and that blanco, barebacked, fiscal expression, Marchinsky, Scapulopoulos, douze-and-a skewer other. Your masher's mutton's legs getting muscle-bound from being too pulled. Noah Beery weighed stone 1001 when Hazel was a hen. Now her fat's falling fast. Therefore, chatbags, why not yours? There are 29 sweet reasons why Blossom Time's the blessed. Elders fall for green almonds when they're raised on brewstone roots. Root ginger, though, it winters on their heads as if octumed round their waistbands. If you had pains in your hair, you wouldn't look so orgibald. You'd have Collie McHairs on your lump of lead. Now listen, Mr. Lear, and stow that sweaty funny Adam simper. Take an old geezer who calls on his skirts. Note his sleek hair, so elegant, tableau vivant. He vows her to be his own honey lamb, swears they will be papa pals by Sam, and share good times way down west in a guaranteed happy love nest. When May moon she shines, and they twinkle all the night, combing the comet's tail upright and shooting pop guns at the stars. Cream puffs all to dime, every nice Missy Mackenzie's, for dear old Grumpapper he's gone on the razzle-da, through gazing and crazing and blazing at the stars. Compris, she wants her wardrobe to heal from above by return with cash, so as she can buy her Peter Robinson trousseau and cut a dash with Artie, Bert, or possibly Charlie Chance, who knows. So tolol her, Mr. Hunker, you're too dada for me to dance. So off she goes. And that's how half the girls in town has got their bottom drawers, while Grumpapper he's trying to hitch his braces onto his trowers. But old Grum, he's not so clean dippy between sweet you and yum. Not on your life, boy. Not in those trousers. Not by a large jugful. For someplace on the sly where Furphy, he isn't by old Grum, has he, girl number 2. Brave our Grum. And he would like to canoodle her too some part of the time, for he is downright fond of his number 1. But oh, he's fair mashed on Peach's number 2, so that if he could only canoodle the 2, chivy chivoo, all 3 would feel genuinely happy. It's as simple as ABC, the 2 mixers we mean, with their cherry bum chappy, for he is simply shamming dippy if they all were afloat in a dream lifeboat, hugging 2 by 2 in his zoo, do you do? A toff for thee, missy for me, and a how came you in so for father in his tippy, up and down dippy, tip-top tippy canoodle, can you, Finny? With a clap-trap and salt and mint 3 to a loaf, our mutual friends, the fender and the bottle at the gate, seem to be implicitly in the same bateau, so to singing, bearing also several of the earmarks of design. For there is, in fact, no use in putting a tooth in a snipery of that sort, and the amount of all those sort of things which has been going on once a day in and twice a day out, every other narstig stag among all kinds of promiscuous individuals at all ages, in private homes, and rebus publicus, and all over, all and elsewhere throughout secular sequence, the country over and over abroad, has been particularly stupendous. To be continued. Federals United Transport Unions for exultations of triumphant ecstasies. But resuming inquiries, will it ever be next morning the postal unionists, officially called carriers, Letters Scotch Limited? Strange fate, fierce and giddy sex, he's heighty the lozo that hawks around Missy Maid's gummy backs. To hand in a huge chain envelope, written in 7 diverse stages of ink, from blanche essence to lavendate, every pothook and pancrook bespeaking the wisherwife, superscribed and sub-penciled by yours, a lockable party, with afterwhite SAG to hide in cheek, Edenberry, Dublin, WC. Will whatever will be written in Lappish language, with inbursts of Magyar, always seem semposed, black-looking white and white-guarding black, with that Siamic tuatalk, used twist, stern swift, and jolly Roger? Will it bright upon us, Nightle, and we plunging to our plight? Well, it might now, Merkel, so it light. Always and ever till Cox his wife, twice Mrs. Han, pokes her beak into the matter with Owen K. after her, to see what was some matter after. Will this Kiribus pouch filled with literish fragments lurk dormant in the paunch of that half-brother of a herm, the pillar-box? The coffin, a triumph of the illusionist's art, at first blenched naturally taken for a hand-harp. It is hand-warped to the distinguished Jujabe, from Jabul or ether, from Tubote, when all 3 have just been invented, had been removed from the hardware premises of Oatsman and Nephew, a noted house of gone most west, which in the natural course of all things continues to supply funeral requisites of every needed description. Why needed, though? Indeed needed. Wouldn't you feel like rat and fowl if you hadn't the Oscar? Because the flash sprides, or bride in their lily boleros, won games with a nibby-noobies finery ball in your upright grooms that always come right up with you, and by jingo when they do. What else in this mortal world now ours, when meet their night, mine their racked, meet their narket? What else in this mortal world now ours, when meet their night, mid their nacht, me their naked, made their naught the hour strikes, would bring them right back in the flesh, thumbs down to their horses and their hashes. To proceed, we might leave that nutrients of oxygens to take in free of the air and just unelectrolyze that very chimerical combination, the gas bag where the water works, and try to pout some more heterogen up the atmosphere. In the bottled Helios case continuing, long lally tobkids, the special, sporting a fine breast of medals, and a conscientious scripture reader to boot in the brick and tin church round the coroner, swore like a Norwegian tailor on the stand before the proper functionary that he was up against the right queer snort of a man in the butcher of the blues who, he continued, on last evening, after delivering some carcasses, mutton chops, and meat jutes on behalf of Messrs. Otto Sands and Eastman, Limerick, victuallers, went and, with his unmitigated astonishment, hicked at the Dun and Doris against all the runes, and, when challenged about the pretended hick, it was kick up and down with him,
on his solemn bide, imputed, said simply, I upon by oath, Philip's captain, you did, as I so stressed before. You are deep knee in error, sir. Madam Tompkins, let me then tell you, replied with a gentle womanly salam MacPartland, the Meatman's family, and the oldest in the world except nickname. And Phelps was playful with his peeler, but his fizz fell. Now to the obverse. From velveteens to dimities is barely a 5-finger span, and hence these camelback excesses are thought to have been instigated by one or either of the causing causes of all, those rushy hollow heroines in their skirt sleeves. Be she Magretta, be she the Posk. Oh, because it is a horrible thing to have to say today, but one Delilah, Lupita Lorette, shortly after, in a fit of the unexpectednesses, drank carbolic with all her dear placid life before her, and paled off, while the other soiled dove, that's her sister-in-law, Luperca Latouche, finding one day while dodging chores that she stripped teasily for binocular man, and that her jams were jib-joyed to see each other, the naughty girl soon found her fruitful hat too small for her, and rapidly taking time, she rapidly took to necking, partying, and selling her spare favours in the hay-mow, or in lumber closets, or in the green on-had hook. There are certain intimacies in all ladies' lavatories we just lease to imagination. Or in the sweet churchyard close itself, for a bit of soft coal, or an array of thin trunks. Serving whom in fine that same hot coney, a la zingara, which our own little Grania of the chilly red cheeks dished up to the great sire of Oscar, that son of a cool. Auri of the coast of Emerald, Ara of the lassessive Pogue, Aslam or Muslim, the resigned to her surrender. Did not she, come Leinster's even, true daughter of a Dearmud, her pitch was 40 steps in her perch old Cromwell's quarters, with so Valkyrie a licence as sent many a poor poker packing to perdition, again and again, aye, and again, sferar him, teesfido, 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 toos, tappos, stop, dog of a dig gower ye, angelos me, and did not he, like Arco Forti, far off Bisavolo, misbrand her behaviors with iridescent hue cry of downright mean false sop lap sick dope, Toffelsdreck, a rain of the sea, a Shabeen queen, a crane, a queen of pranks, a kingly man of royal mien, regally robed, exalted in his glory, so gave, so take, not now, he would just amin, suffering trumpet, he thought he want, what? Here, here, living of the land, hungry dead era, hark, he, eyes ravenous on her lippling lils, he hear her voice of a day gone by, he hears, zay, but by the beer of his prophet he cannot answer. Up their potty to rise and shine, nor needs none shaft ne steel from Phoenicia or Little Asia to obilize on the spout, neither poblecock, nor neither folkestone, nor sunkenness in Tomar's wood to be ray house express gang score off the road. The mouth that tells not will ever attract the unthinking tongue, and so long as the obscene draws theirs,
which hear not so long, till all earth's dumb nation shall be blind, lead the deaf. Tacho, tawny yeaklings, the column of lumps lends the pattern of the leaves behind us. If violence to life, limb in chattels, often as not, has been the expression, direct or through an agent male, of womanhood offended. Had not levy of blackmail from the times the fairies were in it, and fain for a wild earth blossoms followed an impressive private reputation for whispered sins. Now by memory inspired, turn wheel again to the hole of the wall, where giant blind from Peenly or more, there was once upon a wall, and a hoogog wall a was, and such a wall hole did exist, ere or are in Ireland, or you dare hares or you digging mauses, on your hoard of orts and oriots to garble a garthin of Odin in the lost palidays, when all the Edams ended with aves. Amen. The dawn is theirs and still to see for Menags if he strikes a Luciferich, and we'll come to those bare gaze shoe shines if you just shoot over a second. And let Oggs be good old gaggles and Ister Esther play Yester Aster, in the dream of Sorostostarius deceased. A stone-hinged gate then was for another thing, while the Soroptimist had bought and enlarged that shack under fair rental of 1 yearling sheep, prime, value of 6 pence, and 1 small yearling goat, caret, value of 8 pence, to grow old and happy, hog it and kid him, for the remnants of his years. And when everything was got up for the purpose, he put an Applegate on the place, by no means as some pretext a bedstead in lieu thereof, to keep out donkeys, the pig dirt hanging from the jags to his hour makes that clear. And just then abouts the iron gape, by old custom left open to prevent the cats from getting at the goat, was triple padlocked on him on purpose by his faithful porters, to keep him inside, probably and possibly, and until he felt this sticking out of his chest too far. And until he felt like sticking out his chest too far, and tempting gracious Providence by a stroll on the People Plays Eggs Day, unused as he was yet to being freely clodded. Oh, by the by, let's we brag of praties. It ought to be always remembered in connection with what has gone before, that there was a North rumour, ere Betry offender, out for his Zimmer holdings, digging in number 32 at the Rum and Punchin, branch of Dirty Dick's free house in Laxlip, where the sockeye salmons were stopping at the time orange fasting. Prior to that, a commercial, Gorbo Tipaco, he was reeking like Zentro Orly rubber. From Osterich, the USE paying, gall save the mark, 11 in the week. Gosh, these holy Romans, of conscience money in the first deal of July, while he was swishing bees nest with pleasure, then swabbing brogue in Irish myth, brogue in Dutch, making his reportage on their foul Adams for the Franco-Ferto siding, a fast land pay ridicule in air. Con stated that one had on him the Lynn O'Brien, a melting lambswool disturbed, and wider he might the same Zurich chicken other he would. With tosin to Albertosin Tana Waters, one monkey's damages become. Now you must know, Franksmen, to make a heart of glass, that the same of gaze and bandstand butchery was merely a patio strap tissue of threats, and abuses such as Roebuck's wrath at Pinnacle's Peak and after this sort. Humphrey's unsolicited visitor, Davy or Titus, on a Burghley's clan march from the Middle West, a highly excellent crude man about rode who knew his bull-foosed mountains like a starling beard. After doing a long dance, untitled to cloudy green, deposed his box stump on the weight you may call one time, want me. After having blew some Quakers, oh, for you oats, in through the house king's keyhole to attract attention, bleated through the gale outside, which was terror of his clothes, was hog-collaring first, be the hirsute, that he would break his boosy wigger's head for him next, be the heel-tapper, that he would break the gauge over his lanky duckling head the same way he would crack a nut with a monkey wrench, and, last of all, be the stirabouter, that he would give him his, or their proms, or any bloody else's, thicker than water to drink, and his bloody stepbrothers into the bucket. He demanded more wood alcohol to pitch in with, alleging that his grandfather was all taxes, and that it was only after 10 O'Connell, and this his Isbar was a public oven for the sake of Erkoski, and then, not easily discouraged, opened the wrath floods of his artillery, and went on at a wicked rate, weathering against him in mooks metaphors from 11:30 to 2 in the afternoon, about even a luncheon at interval for House, son of Ode, to come out, you Jew beggar, to be executed. Amen. Earwicker, that pattern mind, that paradigmatic ear, receptor or retentive as his if Dionysus, long-suffering although whitening under restraint, in the citadel corner of the conservatory, behind famine-built walls, his thermos flask and Rapidian flable by his side, and his walrus whisker bristle for a tusk pick, compiled, while he mourned the flight of his wild guineas, a long list, now feared and part lost, to be kept on file of all abusive names he was called. We have been compelled for the rejoicement of fine ladies in the humours of Milltown, etc., by Josephine Brewster in the Coliseum, known as contrastations with Inkerman and so on word, laces in lieu, fleece estelias, one clean turve. First nighter, informer, old fruit, yellow wigger, wheat ears, goldy gate, bogside beauty. Yes, we've had his bananas. Yes, we've had his bananas. York's porker, funny face. At Baggetty's Bend, he bunked. Grease with the butter. Open door auspices. Cain and Abler, Ireland's 8th wonderful wonder. Beat my price, God's soil man. Moonface the murderer. Hoary hairy hoax. Midnight sunburst. Remove that Bible. Heb dromedary publication. Tummer the lame and tyrannous. Blow clay. Tight before tea time. Read your panther joke. Acoustic disturbance. Thinks he's God blast the good Duke of Argyle. W.D.'s Grace. Gibbering behemoth of Dublin. His father was a munzucker and she had him in a growler. Burn him in Bailey. Artist. Unworthy of the homely Protestant religion. Terry Cotter. You're welcome to water food, signed the ribbon men. Lobster pot lardling, all for Arthur of this town. Whoosh the cat from the backen, lay their togs Donald, the ace and deuce of poppering. O'Reilly's delights to kiss the man behind the barrel. Megagagag, Swad Puddlefoot, Gouty Gibbeline, Loose Luther, hatches cock's eggs, muddle the plan, luck before wedlock, I divorce thee husband, tanner and a make, go to Helena or come to Connie's, piebald puff puff his bride, purged out of Burke's, he's none of me causin, barbarian, peculiar person, grunt hours factotum, 12 months aristocrat, lycanthrope, flunky beetle vamps the tune, letting on he's lonely, thunder and turf married into Clandorf, left boots sent on approval, cumberer of lords holy ground, Starge Arshman, Aunt Yoke, Tommy Furlong's pet plagues, Archduke and Cabinger, last past the post, Ken Cally won't tell thee off, Nancy Gown. Scuttle to cover, salary grab, Andy McNoon in Annie's room, all out, Twitch brash balls, bombard street buster, Sublime Porter, a band for the king of the Bergens, and a bomb for ye sword of all the Rutledges. O Phelim's cut price, and that number 111. What he done to Castle Costello, sleeps with feathers and ropes. It is known who sold Horace the Rattler, enclosed find the sons of Fingal, swayed in his falling, wants a wife and 40 of them. Let him do the fair. Apg Quani Chimuk, plop goes his wassail, ruin of the small trader, he. Milking honey beaver brooker, V was a vintner, sour rapes. Armenian atrocity, sick fish belly up, Edomite, man devoid of the commoner characteristics of an Irish nature. Bad Hamburg, Rob, cuckoo handler, dirt, meeshing daddy, born burst feet foremost, Woolworth's worst, Asiatic fallow sophist, guilty pig's bastard, fast in the barrel, booze in the bed, Mr. Fat Mate, incostity of the polis, Bowles allocutionist, deposed. But anarchistically respectful of the liberties of the non-invasive individual, did not respond a solitary wedge-word beyond such sedentarity, though it was as easy as kiss anywhere for the passive resistant in the booth he was into reach for the hello gripes of the ring-up Kimmage outer 1767. Because, as the fundamentalist explained, when at last shocked into speech, touching his wounded feelings, in the Fouchiar, the Dominican mission of the Saucilist party was on at the time, and he thought the Romish devotion known as the Holy Rosary might reform him gone. That more than considerably unpleasant bollocky before he ran off drunkishly, pegged a few Gladstones, all of a side, by way of final mocks for his grapes, at the wicket in support of his words, that he was not guilty, but, after he had so slung a volleyed, reconnoitring through his semi-subconscious the seriousness of what he might have done had he really polished off his terrible intentions, finally caused him to change the bowling and leave down the whole grumus of Brook Pebbles, pang pong, and, having sobered up a bit, paces his ground old diablin leondob, the flay, the phlegm, the floody fleshner, Percy first, I splish the splume of them all.
The back block's brewer brusquely put out his language and quite quit the paleologic scene, telling how by his self-denying ordinance he had left Highland on the dissenting table after exhorting Earwicker, or, in slightly modified phraseology, Messieurs and Messrs. Earwicker, sire, his feminizable name of multitude, to come outside to Muckerloo, out of that, for the honour of Crumlin, with his broody old flish gogs cursed to him, so as he could Brian slog and burst him all dizzy, Hugo Bell, like Potts Fracture did with Kettle Flatnose, and nobody at all with Holy Famous. And build rocks over him, or if he didn't, for 32 straws, by Campbell, he didn't know what he wouldn't do for him, nor nobody else, no more nor for him, after which, Bartel, Martel, Abrisha, Mila, Stroka, Abula, saw the rage of Malbrook, playing on the least change of his Manchester's voice, the first heroic couplet from the fungual tropical opus elf 32. My schemes into abeyance for this time has had to fall. They bid goodbye to their thumb, and his bandol ear his soldier. Drip, drop, drop on pool or poger, wishing the lawful Philadelphian in the morning, proceeded with a hobble-forth slouch in his slips backwards, et Kerhealy, in the directions of the deaf and dumb institutions about 10 or 1100 years lurch away in the moonshiny gorge of the Pat Self on the Bach. Adio. And thus, with this Rochely Exeter of Bullyacre, came to close that last stage in the sainings round our archy citadel, which we would like to recall if old Nestor Alexis would wink the worth for us, as Barley Duke and Dog and Doris and Bangin' Up Zoom. Yet he made leave to many a door beside the Oxman's wald, for so witness his chambered cairns, a cloud o' litter, silent that o'er it brows uphill and down combe, and on Eolith Ostraton, at Howth or at Coolock, or even at Enniskerry, a theory none too rectiligne of the evaluation of human society, in a testament of the rocks from all the dead unto the some the living. Oliver's lambs we do call them, scatterlings of a stone, and they shall be gathered unto him, their herd and paladin, as nubilets to Cumul, in that day when, same the lightning lancer of Azava Arthur honoured, some fin avant, he shall wake from earth's sleep, hot-crested Elmer, in his vale of briars of Greenman's rise, oh, lost leaders live, the heroes return, in Ordun and Dal, in the Wolver-Ulverlard, protect us. His mighty horn shall roll, Orland, roll. For in those days his deus shall ask of Alprohome, and call to him Alprohome, and he make answer, ad sum. Nor wink nor wunk, animadiaborum, mene credisti mortuum. Silence was in thy faustive halls, O Truiga, when thy green woods went dry, but there will be sounds of many mirth on the night's ear ringing, when our patriarch of comes to Wantonoble gets the
pullover on his boots. Liverpool sought a bit of it. His brains could parich, his pear nast, his pelt nassy, his heart's a drone. His blood streams a crawl, his puff but a piff, his extremities extremely so. Fengless, Pombroke, chilblamond and bawd hour, humph is in his doge. Words weigh no more to him than raindrips to weather him, which we all like, rain, when we sleep, drops, but wait until our sleeping drain. Stop.